Hello, everyone.
Hi.
I'm Joe Tufano, and today I'm here for a special episode or a special video, if you will, on another discussion regarding discussing movie formulas or genre formulas, more or less. And I would like to welcome my guest, my good friend Rachel Wagner. Say hi, Rachel.
Hi. I'm glad to be here.
All right, glad to have you on. I've been wanting to do a discussion with you again since our Christmas movie special last year. That was a lot of fun.
It's hard to believe that was almost 10 months ago or 10 months ago. That's crazy.
Oh wow.
Time
Whew.
flies.
You're darn right, yeah. And she and I will do maybe another discussion or two in the future, depending on what the topic is, and also because of time, like time zones. You live in Utah, right?
Correct.
Okay, yeah, I live in Pennsylvania, so there's a 2-hour time difference, so we got to factor those in. But today we're going to talk about something that I've had on my mind for maybe since December of last year with Force Awakens, which spoiler alert, we will talk about that in a little bit later. But it's something that I've debated about myself, and I'm not sure. Maybe you have, Rachel, but I think sticking to the formula and doing things within the formula that make it unique, or is it a bad thing that they do something?
I'm going to be kind of a weird guest on this one because I kind of go both ways. So it'll be interesting to talk about it because I haven't
Okay.
quite decided what I think.
Oh yeah. So you shared the link or anything, or?
Yeah, sorry.
Oh yeah. Go ahead.
There we go.
Oh, and by the way, I got the right shirt on for this. Yeah,
Nice.
Star Wars. Oh, what was that? Oh, it's oh, I just got your Facebook notification. So
Oh.
yeah, I'm still on my Facebook page for some reason because I thought I was waiting for a message from you through Facebook. So
Because I just had uh, tagged you.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
there we go.
Oh, and before we start, we are gonna find a date to talk about this movie, right? Mask of the Phantasm. We still got to talk about that.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, I'm glad I have a DVD copy of this at least because oddly enough, Warner Brothers doesn't have a Blu-ray for it.
No, it's so dumb.
Yeah, it's
I
like,
was
yeah, like when are you gonna release that? Come on.
I really, it's so weird. Um, I thought that maybe with Batman v Superman, maybe they might, or with the Killing Joke, maybe they might release it on Blu-ray. But
Anything's possible, but I have the DVD, so it's better than nothing, really.
hmm
So, you all set?
Okay, done. Yep.
Okay, ready? Starting. Okay, you're gonna be on air. Processing. And we're live. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
I'm Joe Tufano, and today I'm here for a special episode or a special video, if you will, on another discussion regarding discussing movie formulas or genre formulas, more or less. And I would like to welcome my guest, my good friend Rachel Wagner. Say hi, Rachel.
Hi. I'm glad to be here.
All right, glad to have you on. I've been wanting to do a discussion with you again since our Christmas movie special last year. That was a lot of fun.
It's hard to believe that was almost 10 months ago or 10 months ago. That's crazy.
Oh wow.
Time
Whew.
flies.
You're darn right, yeah. And she and I will do maybe another discussion or two in the future, depending on what the topic is, and also because of time, like time zones. You live in Utah, right?
Correct.
Okay, yeah, I live in Pennsylvania, so there's a 2-hour time difference, so we got to factor those in. But today we're going to talk about something that I've had on my mind for maybe since December of last year with Force Awakens, which spoiler alert, we will talk about that in a little bit later. But it's something that I've debated about myself, and I'm not sure. Maybe you have, Rachel, but I think sticking to the formula and doing things within the formula that make it unique, or is it a bad thing that they do something similar that a previous movie did? So that's what we're really going to be talking about. But do you feel the same way? Have you debated about that in your head, like sticking to a formula?
Yeah, and I was just going to say we do have the chat room open. It looks like we have two people on the chat room, so that's awesome. And
Oh, great.
I'll be trying to monitor as we talk. So put in your comments.
Okay.
And I've been thinking about this ever since you suggested the topic, and I'm really kind of torn. I because I think there's sometimes when I think the formula really works and it's executed well, and then there's other times where I feel like it can be lazy.
Mm.
And I was telling you, for me, Jurassic World was a lazy example of it. I felt
Okay.
like, yeah, I felt like it was just sloppy with the plot. There were so many questions that they didn't answer, and it was a generic monster movie, and it was fun on that level, I guess.
Yeah.
But I don't know, I just the characters were so dopey and silly, and I didn't really like it. And I love the original, and the original
Oh, I do. I love it
is
too.
yeah, the original like asks questions about man and God, and it's more than just a playing God. It's more than just a monster movie.
Mm.
Whereas this was a formula kind of monster movie, and all the attempts to kind of tie into the original film didn't really work. And I mean, there's lots of examples where I felt like it didn't work. Terminator Genesis would be another
Ugh.
one that
Ugh. Ugh.
didn't work. That tapped into a lot of formula of a Terminator movie, and it didn't
Uh,
work. And so I've been trying to think of when but I felt like Force Awakens worked, and I enjoyed it, and I thought that I think that most of the Marvel movies have worked, and there's a strong
yeah.
formula with those.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, I'm torn. So I'm curious to kind of hash it out with you. And what's one that you feel like didn't work, and one you feel like did work?
Well, since you brought up Jurassic World and Terminator Genesis, I didn't see your review of Jurassic World. I think after this, I'll probably go back and take a look at it. But
I was a little nicer. I've soured on it a little bit,
oh,
but I think I
okay,
did give it a C plus at the time.
okay.
Yeah. So I
But
was kind of like,
yeah, not for you.
I mean, like I said, it's fun on a monster movie kind of level, I guess. But I feel like I expect more from Jurassic Park movies,
I've,
even though I
I've,
shouldn't, because 2 and 3 weren't very good.
oh,
But anyway, yeah, I
yeah.
was disappointed by it, I guess.
Okay. Well, I personally like Jurassic World. I mean, it's nowhere. You see that it's a weird thing for me because that movie, I didn't think it was going to be good when they announced it. And like Jurassic World, we're finally announcing Jurassic Park 4. And I thought, oh my goodness, really? What more can we do with this thing? And the trailers, I thought, okay, that looks kind of fun. And I saw it with my friend who I served in the army with. He loves the original, and he and his other friend went with us, and we were in the IMAX theater. I can still remember it vividly. It was over a year ago, but by the end of it, I thought, oh wow, that was like not amazing, enjoyable, and yeah, some of the plot is a bit uneven, I guess, if that's the way to put it. And I figured there was going to be some callbacks to the original because
Mm-hmm.
it's not like Jurassic. It's not like Star Wars, I guess, where you have multiple movies, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a Jurassic Park formula. There's gonna be like man versus nature. Like don't screw with nature because then it'll blow up in your face. So I expected that to happen, but I do appreciate, like for me anyway, how they tweaked it in a way like they created a new dinosaur to get the people to come back, get people interested again. Because after a while, you get tired of the same old thing. So they try to bring something a little new into it. And I
Yeah, but
like.
I sorry. Didn't mean
Oh
to
no,
interrupt.
it's okay. I was just gonna say I do like the notion of Chris Pratt training the Raptors. Like I thought that was really kind of cool personally. We never really
Yeah.
saw like a Raptor whisperer kind of character. I mean, maybe we did in the
Mm-hmm.
original with that one guy who got jumped on in the jungle or whatever when he was after he hung out with Laura Dern, but never to the extent that Chris Pratt is like stand down, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought
Yeah,
that was
Chris Pratt was really good in it. I just I don't know, like I felt like that whole thing to create the super monster was really dumb because because uh like this is a park that's in the middle of nowhere. It's not kind of place that people are going to be able to visit every year, and be like, oh, I'm getting bored. And the idea that people would get bored of dinosaurs seems like a big stretch to me. And so, people say, oh, you just got to turn off your brain, but I don't know. I could not. Like, those things bothered me. And like the fact that people would, I don't know. I mean, like, people still watch Shark Week every year since the 60s. Sharks haven't gotten boring. So I don't think that T-Rexes would get boring. And I just thought the Claire character was so dumb, and I thought that, yeah, it just didn't work for me. I didn't think that. It's not a horrible movie. It's not like, I mean, Terminator Genesis is way worse.
Well, that's the one I was going to bring up.
I was miserable, but I didn't think it worked very well. So if we're talking about a formula film, in my opinion, Jurassic World didn't work and was kind of lazy. Okay. And then but then other ones I feel like can embrace that formula and do it really well. We got a lot of opinions here in the chat room. We have Tom Blakeney says, I had a good time with Jurassic World, but I wouldn't go so far as to say that I love it. And 22 Tiger Dude says, Jurassic World was just all right, in my opinion. I can understand why Joe and others really liked it, though. So,
oh, yeah. He and I talked about it last year when we did when I did my first hangout with him. But, yeah, I've kind of figured that it was going to happen. Not everybody was going to like it. And I understand why you don't like it, but,
yeah,
I guess for me it's a little different because I'm not too easily irritated by certain things that happen. Like when I see, I'm not saying you or anybody else specifically, but when I see people get upset over, like, oh, I don't know, like, what's an example? Like, how did Ray, like, what was it? How come she was so good at, like, using that pistol? It's like, who cares? Okay, it's not important, but I mean, it's cool, but it's like who cares? It's got nothing to do with what's happening in the movie. I guess that's kind of a weird example or anything. Well,
22 Tiger Dude says, the awkward moment when I liked Terminator Genesis more than Jurassic World.
Oh, wait, yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, like, I guess for me with Jurassic World, like, it didn't give enough other stuff. Like with Force Awakens, I was willing to, like, I mean, when people claim that Rey is a Mary Sue, I say she had Mary Sue moments, but I don't think the character was a Mary Sue. And I think that's a lazy argument against The Force Awakens. Yeah. But I think that it had enough that was sort of new and different and exciting and looked different and drew you in. That for me, Jurassic World didn't. Didn't have enough, and so I ended up being bothered by those things that wouldn't have bothered me otherwise, if that makes sense. And so I think that's what happens a lot with these formula films is that, yeah, like I can see, like with Captain America: Civil War, that definitely follows like a Marvel formula, you know, and there are no stakes, and I get the criticisms of it, but it had enough meat in there for me to be okay with the formula.
Oh yeah. But and since we brought up Terminator's, I almost said Salvation, Genesis, I think that was probably the one time where I honestly, I'm not sure if that I mean, for me, I don't know if that qualifies as like really formulaic. I mean, okay, yeah, you have Kyle Reese going back in time to protect Sarah Connor again, and you got to stop the bad guys. But I think the biggest part for me was when John is revealed to be a Terminator, and out of nowhere he just starts saying, "I can't be bargained with, can't be reasoned with, blah blah blah." It's the same thing that Kyle Reese said to Sarah in the first movie. That part in particular was where I honestly felt insulted.
Yeah,
like, I felt like it was literally trying to make me like the movie, and I thought, really, you're using that to try to bait me into this? Mm-hmm. Give me a break.
Yeah, it really. Spoiler alert, I guess, on Terminator Genesis.
Oh, if you haven't seen the trailers. Oh man.
Yeah, it didn't give you enough. Like everything looked. Everything looked like a generic copy of what we had seen before.
Yeah.
Yeah,
sorry about that. I just had to fix something over here. But yeah, I mean, on the one hand, though, it was nice to see Schwarzenegger come back. I've been waiting for you.
Yeah, he had a few little moments that were fun.
Yeah.
And
And J.K. Simmons is in that movie too.
yeah, that was weird. Talk
Yeah.
about underused.
Oh yeah, and he was like probably the best part of the whole thing because he was trying to prove to his fellow officers or whatever that these machines were real, but that kind of I felt like that kind of got thrown under the bus a little too soon. So
Yeah.
that's okay. So like, just let me check my.
So what's so if Terminator Genesis is a formula film that didn't work for you, do you have any others that didn't really work for you?
I usually go to that one. That's usually, but I also try to think of others.
I
I'm not
mean, would
really.
you say that Batman v Superman was a formula film?
I'll tell you that I don't even remember half the stuff that happened because I was so bored.
See, that's the danger of formulas too. And I know a lot of people think the Marvel movies are boring because they don't give you anything necessarily that new and different. And I've heard that criticism before.
No, sorry about that. My dog is.
You're fine.
Hanging with my door here. So yeah, as far as other ones, I'm not really sure. I guess. Well, okay, I kind of have an example here. I don't know if you've ever seen The Hangover or not.
I have not.
Okay, well, I won't spoil it if you haven't seen it because it's very crude and very vulgar. But the second movie, I mean, I don't know why I went into two movies, but the second one was in a different location. But it was basically the same thing. They got drunk, they got hungover, and they're trying to retrace their steps and find their friend. It's a little different because they're trying to find someone else, and the one that got missing in the previous movie, luckily that didn't happen to him again, but it was kind of basically the same thing. And there were some funny moments in there, and I don't mind it, but at the same time, it was just a real big waste of time. It's like, why? Why even bother?
Yeah.
So, and then I've heard people mention Ghostbusters 2 felt like a retread, and I don't know. I kind of see what they're saying, but I don't think it really was. I mean, I don't know about you. Did you feel the same way?
Yeah, I mean, it really is. I don't think Ghostbusters 2 is a very good movie. And the weird thing about Ghostbusters 2 is they act like nothing ever happened. Like everybody's like, sure you were, destroying those ghosts, and sure you are. And it's like, hasn't been that long since there was a giant marshmallow man in the city. Like, I think people would remember.
Oh yeah.
And so it didn't really make sense. And I guess that's I don't know. Like so this is an interesting question. Let's see. Where was it? Tavia says, "What about Captain America: Civil War broke the formula for you?" And so why do we like that movie better than, say, other formula films that we've been talking about? What do you think it did right?
I think it was, well, I think the one big refresher that I noticed was that there was no big giant city battle or like big giant explosive kind of action fest that we have seen in some of the other ones in the MCU.
Mm-hmm.
Like Avengers, you had aliens flying around New York City, and that was all well done and well executed by Joss Whedon. And Age of Ultron had a similar thing where you had this big city in the sky, and that was fine. But after a while, it's like, how many more times are we going to have to go through this fighting a big baddie in the middle of the city? So
yeah, with the tunnel of tornado of evilness we've gotten
yes, and
we've gotten 15 times this year.
Yeah. Oh no! Don't even. Oh, Suicide Squad just came into my head.
Suicide Squad, Ghostbusters. There's a ton. Yeah.
I liked how the Civil
Teenage
War.
Mutant Ninja Turtles had it. Like a bunch had it.
I didn't see Ninja Turtles, so I can't say.
Yeah.
But with Civil War. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. I was just gonna say, for me, what would make Civil War different is that it added more to the characters. And so I think if you don't have an investment in Steve and Tony, I don't think that it's that good, will be as good of a movie for you. But right. I do have an investment in those characters, and I think that that you saw Tony have to deal with the death of his parents. You saw
Yes.
him going through with the kind of, you saw the end of his character arc that started in Iron Man 3, where he'd been having all of these panic attacks,
Yeah.
and then he creates Ultron, and he has to deal with that, the aftermath of that, and you see him looking for something to kind of take away his agency, his fear, because he has done these bad things and he has this panic. And then you have Steve, where he has just seen not only governments in war and conflict in his life, of course,
Yeah.
but he has seen Shield itself get corrupted in
Winter Soldier.
uh, Winter Soldier. And so, of course, he's not going to want to sign the Accord. Of course, he's not going to want to give up that agency. And so you saw these development of these two characters. And so for me, that's what made it different and better than a typical superhero movie, a bland superhero movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah. Somebody asked here, or 22 Tiger Dude says, what's the difference between a ripoff and an homage to you?
Wow. It's a good question. Well, I guess when it comes to homage, I guess another example that comes to mind is Super 8 by J.J. Abrams. Have you seen that
Good
one?
example. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've heard people say that they hated it or that it was just not original or anything, and excuse me, it felt very much like E.T. It felt like those like it's something that Spielberg would have made when he was in his prime, but oddly enough, I think J.J. Abrams is really able to capture the aesthetic of Spielberg's movies from that era, and he also had characters that you could feel for, and that the main character Joe or whatever, he lost his mom, and Elle Fanning's character, her dad was kind of responsible for it, and he's feeling guilty about it. And there's not and I think that the final resolution to it, like as far as the characters go, there's not a big fight between Elle Fanning's dad and the main character Joe, or like Joe's dad, the cop, played by, what's the guy's name? Kyle Chandler. He played the police officer. I think that's his name. I don't know.
Oh yeah. In Super 8, yeah.
Yeah. So there wasn't
Chandler.
some big argument or a big fist fight or anything. It was just handled through look, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for your wife to die or anything. So it was in that way. I thought, okay, there's not a big argument that you probably would have expected, but yeah, it's not entirely original. I get it, but as far as a ripoff, I don't know. I never really gave it that much thought.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that for me, a ripoff is here's an interesting example. Have you seen Bryan Singer's Superman Returns?
Oh yes, years ago.
So this is an example of a formula film that, I'm not going to say a ripoff is too strong a word, but it followed the formula of the Richard Donner films so exactly that it didn't really bring much new to the table, even to the point of casting someone who looked extremely like Christopher Reeve. And and the stuff that they did bring new to the table was just kind of depressing and bland. And so that's where we don't want to see a Superman movie about a bitter Lois Lane as a single mom, whereas yeah. So I think that's a case. Like I said, ripoff's too strong of a word, but I think that's an example of when they took the homage too far, when they, instead of kind of just having a loving wink to what had gone in the past, because we were in the age of nostalgia, and everything is. But I think you kind of have to, whether it's the character development, you have to kind of, or the or something new that the characters are facing, or something like that you have to kind of bring to the table. Mad Max Fury Road, that is a good example of using the formula, of a Mad Max movie, but bringing so much new to the table, so much new to see and look at and be absorbed in. And
sure.
so You said Superman Returns was a sequel and not a remake, so not really a ripoff. Okay, but there was a lot in there that was an homage to the Donner films, is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
And so I think that hurt that movie as opposed to them just doing their own thing and maybe having a few little winks at the Donner films would have
yeah,
been better.
yeah. I have to admit I haven't seen that movie in like 10 years since it came out. I think last time I saw it was on DVD, and I might like if I ever talk about Superman movies on this channel on my channel, which I think I might, to build up my catalog of reviews, but also try to expand it a little bit. I don't know. I think I might want to watch it again, but at the same time, I'm kind of dreading it because people have said, "Oh, it's boring," and I thought, "Oh, I don't know if I want to sit through it," but I might as well. But I do remember not really liking Kate Bosworth as Lois Lane. I thought that was really bizarre. It's like,
Yeah.
what? Whose idea was that to cast her as Lois Lane? I don't know.
I mean, I think she's a talented actress. She could have pulled it off, but it just was so like droopy and sad and just it was more about her movie than it was about Superman, which is not
That's
what we
fair.
want. And so yeah, it didn't really work. I'm trying to think of other examples of it's just I was coming into this podcast, I'm thinking I'm going to be all over the place, and I'm sorry if I am a little bit because I do feel kind
That's
of
okay.
all over the place about this topic. Like, why does it work sometimes, and why does it not? Like why does something that I don't know, like why does Stranger Things has tons of homages and nostalgia things, and why does that work really well where other things it just annoys me and I don't like it? And I don't
Stranger
know, it's a
Things.
hard question. It's
Okay.
really hard.
Well, and
Question.
there's another thing with the original Star Wars. That wasn't exactly original either. That was like a
Yeah,
homage to the
that's
previous
true.
space operas, like Flash Gordon, Buck Rogers, and all that stuff. And yet, it was made by George Lucas, who had people. I mean, this is a whole different topic, but he had people stopping him and giving him advice. So in that respect, he was able to pull it off with skill. And people might write that off as formulaic, that original movie. But as formulaic as it may be, the bad guys lose in the end. You still care about Luke Skywalker by the end, even though
Yeah.
yeah, he may be a little bit of a whiner, but his life isn't exactly the most exciting when you first meet him. And his uncle doesn't really give him much freedom, even though we know, having seen the other movies, why, because of his father turning to the dark side. It's kind of like, come on, give the kid a little bit of room here, because he's not exactly living a fun life down there.
Yeah.
So,
Definitely.
and
Well, and now there's also the argument to be made too that sometimes new ideas and new properties can be a disaster. Can be
yeah, yeah,
horrible.
yeah,
I
just
mean, people act like they love new ideas, and why does everybody keep doing the same thing? And last year we got a ton of new ideas in sci-fi, kind of area, and they weren't good. They were bad movies. We got Jupiter Ascending. We got
oh.
Chappie, which I personally hated, and and we got Tomorrowland, which was okay at best, I think.
Oh, yeah. I sometimes forget I saw that.
So new ideas are not some kind of guarantee of a good movie. Uh,
No, no.
it's
Sometimes,
tricky. It's a really hard thing.
yeah, that's like one time, like, I mean, I think you follow him, Sam Gavin, Sam's channel. He's a
Yeah.
really, really articulate, really great reviewer. But, sometimes I can't help but want to say to him, like, I want to grab him by the shoulders sometimes and say, Sam, just because something's, but you can't always guarantee originality all the time. Just because something's new and fresh, it doesn't exactly mean that it's going to be a good movie. And even other people pointed out to him, it's like, well, Jurassic Park is based off of a book, and there's other movies that are based off of something else. So originality is not that easy to come by. And I think you said so in your Force Awakens discussion with Abby and Jeremy.
Yeah.
And how if you only liked original movies, I think the most kind of movies you would like were probably 10 movies in your lifetime.
Yeah, there's like 3 Pixar movies. Like I think in the rest. Yeah, I think it's a silly critique when they do enough good things to make it work, I guess.
Yeah,
That it's just this fine balancing act that you
yeah.
have to walk as a screenwriter, I would think. That that you want to give people something that they can kind of latch onto, that's not too different in a way, or if you do it very, very, very different, then you have to execute it really well.
Oh yeah, yeah. It all comes down to the skill of the people behind the camera and writing the screenplay. That's really, and everybody else working. That's what it really comes down to. It's how they construct it, I guess. That's really the big thing.
Yeah, I mean, because Christopher Nolan, this is an interesting. A lot of his movies are interesting because something like Interstellar had
Mm.
a lot of sort of homages to 2001 and other
Yeah.
movies, but it was also very original and very unique. And a lot of people didn't really like it, but I really liked it.
I liked
And
it
so,
too.
yeah, and so it's an interesting, kind of tightrope that you have to kind of walk. And I don't know. It's just a I for me I felt like Force Awakens. Like I said, I felt like it had. Sorry if I'm kind of all over the place. It's just how I feel. But
No, it's okay.
Force Awakens has Mary Sue moments. It has moments that I wish they'd done differently. I wish
Yeah.
that they hadn't had it be so easy for Rey. I wish that they hadn't had the scene where they're knocking off planets like pool ball,
Oh,
playing
like with the
pool.
Star Killer
I
base
wish they
thing.
hadn't done that. I wish they hadn't had another Star Killer base,
Yeah.
or Death Star, basically.
Oh,
Those those things I think were bad, but there was so much on the good side, and I feel like that's what
yeah.
happens a lot in a movie. Like, I'm not consciously making a list of pros and cons in my head, but I
Yeah.
kind of am. So like like a movie will have, say, good special effects, and so it kind of brings it up here, but maybe it has bad dialogue, and so that's sort of a con over here.
Yeah.
Maybe it has uh, good good character development, so then it's a plus over here. But maybe it has some misogynistic moments I don't really like, so that's something
Oh,
over on the con side. And so you have these pluses and cons, and in the end, it's kind of like, did I have a good experience or did I not have a good experience?
yeah. That I would agree with that. Yeah. And since you brought up Ray and Star Killer Base and excuse me, all that other stuff, there's maybe I guess if there's one or two moments with Ray that I think maybe were a little too easy for her. I guess it was the fact, like, after she sees the First Order coming in on that planet and she sees the stormtrooper nearby and she's freaking out trying to figure out how to fix the pistol or anything, and the stormtrooper
Mm-hmm.
sees her and he starts shooting at her, and just like that she kills him instantly. But on the one hand, though, she has this kind of a appalled look on her face, like, how did I do that? And when she closes the door on the Rathtars trying to save Finn, I think maybe that was a little too easy. But it's not a big deal, I guess, because I think Luke kind of had a similar effect in some ways also in the original. Like, he was using the Force, so that kind of helped. But
Yeah, I
still,
mean, Luke is able to get a blast or whatever they're called into this tiny little spot in this, blow up this whole Death Star.
yeah,
And how long had he been flying? I mean, he was no like skilled fighter pilot, like.
no,
So, but for me, like, when it comes down to Force Awakens, like, I loved the lightsaber fights. I thought they were awesome.
yeah,
As far as I just thought it looked like a rod of fire more than any other Star Wars movie I'd ever seen.
yeah, yeah,
And it compared to the prequels where everything looks so choreographed, they're flipping, this looked more like visceral and more real, and I thought that was awesome. So
yeah.
that's like pluses over here. I thought all the performances were really good. So that's
Sure.
pluses over here. I thought that Han's death was devastating and so well handled. I thought
Oh,
BB-8 was so great. I thought that the space battles were awesome and so
thumbs
much
up.
fun. I thought the music was great. I thought that Maz Kanata was really good and interesting character. So all these good things are kind of building up on this side, and then I have these few little things on this side that
Yeah.
I mentioned that were the cons. And so it actually is my favorite Star Wars movie, and people are like, what?
Oh, that's
But
my favorite next to Return of the Jedi.
yeah, and so it's because it's just it took that formula and it did so much I loved that it made it the best for me.
Yeah, and oh, I don't mean to cut you off, but
No.
since you brought up Star Wars, I was going to save that for last, but you know what? Let's talk about it right now. So
Okay.
here's what I got to say. When you probably saw the article I wrote on Movie Pilot, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I had been building that up in my head for a while because I have gotten really sick of people claiming that it didn't do anything new or that it was too familiar. And if anyone who's watching this, if you've seen Chris Stuckman's Force Awakens analysis video, that I think pretty much nails it on the head because every single Star Wars movie in between A New Hope and Force Awakens has similar elements. There's a cantina scene in Episode 2. Why is it fine then and not fine in Force Awakens? And
yeah,
why? Okay, look, some people, I've heard people complain about the Death Star in Return of the Jedi, and I think maybe, did you have a problem with that, if I'm not mistaken?
In Return of the Jedi?
Yeah.
I mean, I am getting a little tired of that, but I was okay with it in Return of the Jedi. My biggest problem with Return of the Jedi is I think that opening number feels more like a mummy movie where they're trying to. It doesn't feel like a Star Wars movie to me.
Okay.
With them trying to free everybody from Jabba's palace and I think it goes on too long. It's about 45 minutes. And it starts to get like, and I think there's certain parts of it that I feel are a little unseemly. Like I don't like it when the girl dances and then is killed.
Oh, yeah.
So that's kind of, again, this doesn't feel like Star Wars to me.
Okay.
And I don't like the way that they kill off Boba Fett. I didn't really like that. I thought that was kind of lame.
I did because I thought it was like the most skilled bounty hunter in the galaxy is killed in the stupidest way possible.
Yeah,
and I always go, bye-bye.
But I like don't get me wrong, I like Return of the Jedi very much. It's this back and forth. Like I do have some negatives for it, but the positives definitely outweigh the negatives. Because I love the scene when the whole sequence with Luke and his father and them. Yes. Oh, that is just one of the best parts of Star Wars. And when he says, "No, I'm gonna come. I'm gonna save you," and Darth Vader says, "You already have."
It's like, oh, I cry.
So
I cry like a baby when I watch it. I sound like a sap, but that's true. I felt the same way. But yeah, I love the moment when his face is in the shadow. Half of it's in the dark, half of it's in the light, and he's torn in that moment. But then Vader says, "How about I turn your sister to the dark side instead?" He goes, "Never."
Yeah.
That's what I do
if
someone did that to my sister. But also to my answer for the Death Star and Return of the Jedi, I think I brought it up when you guys were discussing it last year. I think the reason why we had another Death Star, I mean, creatively, I don't know who made that decision, but I think in terms of like the universe, I think maybe the Emperor thought that, okay, well, we'll try to fix what we did wrong, but if we also maybe we can trick the rebellion into thinking that they could do it again, and then we can trap them in a corner and squash them, thinking that they've got the upper hand over us, because he says to Luke, "It was I who allowed the Alliance to know the location of the shield generator." So when the Rebel fleet arrives and they go, "Oh my God, it's a trap!" and Han and Leia on the Force Moon, they're like, "Oh crap, we didn't see this coming." So the Empire, I guess the Emperor was kind of like, you know what? Let's make them think they can do it again. And then once they're just about ready to pull the plug, then we'll catch them by surprise and they won't stand a chance. So I think that's the reason. That's how I see it anyway.
Yeah. I mean, that's certainly a valid interpretation. I don't have a problem really with it in Return of the Jedi. I do have a problem with it in Force Awakens, though. I mean, it's not, again, it's just, I still have way more positive over here. But I think that it just, I don't know. And just Star Killer Base in general, and like the whole, like, they're going to absorb the heat of the sun or something.
I do like those little twists, though, that they threw in there to make it a little different from the previous two times, though. I thought that was, it was a planet, not just some mechanical straight-up space station. They did turn it into a planet. So even then, I do like those little twists and those little touches that they did.
Yeah.
Personally.
I mean, yeah, I personally, I would have rather them do something else, but it wasn't a deal breaker for me.
Yeah.
That I'm trying to think of what is one thing that was like, that was a deal breaker. I don't know. I mean, I guess.
Well, if I can say something like
Yeah.
Starkiller Base in Force Awakens is not exactly the main focus of that movie. It's
Right.
finding Luke Skywalker, because New Hope, the main thing in that movie is destroying the Death Star, because the rebels stole the plans. They're trying to outrun the Empire. The Empire's hunting them down. What's the main focus in Force Awakens? Find Luke Skywalker. Everybody is looking for him, and that's the main focus. They're trying to find a map to Luke Skywalker, and Starkiller Base is
Rey bringing BB-8 to the
Resistance
to the
base.
rebels. Yeah, Resistance.
Yeah,
and I loved Finn as a character. I loved BB-8. I loved Rey. For the most part, I loved Rey. I really like I said, I liked Maz Kanata. I liked Han in this. I thought they could have done more with Leia. You know, so I had little things, but I still just had so much enjoyment out of the things that I really liked. And I was thinking, I did realize what a deal breaker was for me.
What's that?
In a formula movie was killing Superman. That was a deal breaker. That made me so mad. I was so angry. I'm like, you can't kill Superman in 2 movies. Are you kidding me? And so, that ticked me off so much. And I know other people, it didn't, and that's cool, whatever. But like, I just, because I know it's not real. You know, I know it's not real, and I know he's coming back. And so you're just manipulating me, and you're manipulating my emotions, and you're killing Superman. And so that really, really, really irritated me. And so, I that to me, like, I had, at that point, I had like pros and cons with Batman v Superman, and the cons went, woo! Because that one choice made me so irritated that they would do that.
I got a deal breaker. I don't mean to interrupt, but I got a deal breaker. That doesn't really help. I mean, because I knew that Superman was going to come back in the Justice League anyway, but still, I felt like, really?
That made it worse for me. Like, I would have actually respected the chutzpah of like killing Superman if I didn't know, if I was sort of left like, oh. But the fact that I knew that it wasn't real, it made it even more manipulative and more frustrating for me. Like if you compare it to in Wrath of Khan, Star Trek movie, when Spock dies, spoiler alert, I didn't like you didn't know that he was going to be coming back. Like, you had no idea. And so it was like effective and brutal and agonizing and everything like that. But then we already know, this is, so it doesn't work. And so anyway, for me, killing Superman was a deal breaker. Well, but anyway, so you go ahead.
Okay, well, I would agree with you there, and that's a fair point. But I think the main deal breaker in that one was the Martha thing. Yeah. I hated it. Like, okay, look, I get what the whole intention was, but you're telling me that Batman, who was dead set on killing this guy, he barely knows who he is, and somehow, within like 30 seconds, he decides to become best buddies with Superman, because I kid you not, his mommy was named Martha too. You expect me to believe that these two guys would become best pals because their mamas had the same first name? And you're telling me that this moment is better than Steve Rogers saying to Bucky, "I'm with you to the end of the line"?
Right.
Because in that movie, you already saw their friendship in the first movie. And he said something that only he and Bucky would know about. And Bucky had been struggling with the mind control for a long time. And Steve was like, "I'm not going to fight you. You're my friend. Snap out of it. I'm with you to the end of the line." And Bucky stops and he goes, "Oh my God, I do know you. Steve!" Ah! So.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about the Martha is that he'd been like, if it was like if the fight was an act of sort of rage, and that would kind of wake him up, but that's not what it is. He'd been planning this for months. He'd been training for months. He says if there's a 1 in a million chance that Superman could, we have to take it as an absolute certainty. How is that changed just because his mother is named Martha? That's so ridiculous. I don't care what essays people write on it. I'm sorry. I get it that they were trying to make him realize that he'd become the killer of his mother and everything like that. But it doesn't make sense because you hadn't developed the character in that way, that you had developed him as this vengeful, as this character who is preparing for months and months and months to do this thing that he thinks is the right thing. You're not building him up as this character who's just become really angry and become this killer. Like he's like a sharpshooter in the military or something like that at this point. He's not emotionally invested in killing Superman, really. He's doing it because he thinks it's the right thing to do. And so that wouldn't change. He's not really becoming a killer. He's becoming a soldier in a way, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I guess, well, I don't know if I want to keep talking about Batman v Superman.
But yeah, I mean, it's a weird thing with formulas, that you kind of have to give enough. You can't lean on them. That's the thing. You can't lean on them. And I'm not saying that I don't think Batman v Superman actually did lean on them that much. But you have to you can have them, but there has to be sort of enough good to outweigh the bad. Because when it's not, when there's other negative things about the film and it starts to get higher on this side, then it becomes annoying, and then you become critical, and then you start to and so I think that you're willing to forgive a lot if you're enjoying the movies. I don't know. Sounds like a bad answer, but yeah.
And to go back to Star Wars, I think what you said, don't lean on the formula too much. I think it's the reason why I'm not bothered by stuff like, I don't know, Rey living on a desert planet, or there being a cantina scene, or Han getting killed by Kylo Ren, because some people think that it was just a rehash of Obi-Wan Kenobi's death. Well, I think the thing is, you have to have some similar tropes, but the key is have different things happening in those scenes. Have something new for the characters to go through. Have something a little different with a little bit of similarity to it at the same time. But, put a different spin on it, because Obi-Wan was trying to shut down the tractor beam or whatever that was to help Luke and the gang escape. Han was trying to help set the charges for Starkiller Base to let the Resistance come in and blow it up. Mm-hmm. Darth Vader was the one looking for a fight, and I guess you could say Kylo Ren sensed Han nearby and was trying to draw him out. And Han was trying to bring his son back. He had some doubt, but he still believed that his son was still somewhere down there deep down, and Obi-Wan had given up on his apprentice a long time ago. So to me, that the main antagonist kills a wiser older gentleman, but that's really the only similarity I saw.
Yeah.
So that's the key.
True. I don't know. For me, I thought the good outweighed the bad with Force Awakens. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, and also the ending of Force Awakens, there's no Medal of Honor kind of ceremony. There's a cliffhanger, unlike A New Hope.
Yeah.
So you don't see General Leia Organa awarding Poe Dameron a medal, or the same thing to Rey, because then it would have been too similar.
Mm-hmm. So. Plus, we don't know the whole story. That's the other thing too that we have to remember. If they come out in the next one and it is a carbon copy of Empire Strikes Back, then I'm gonna have a problem. It's gonna affect my feelings of Force Awakens for sure.
Yeah.
And so we don't know the whole story. And so I think we need to be a little bit patient and see what exactly is going on with Rey, what her backstory is, what's the next step for her, why are things so easy? We don't know, and so that's another thing to remember.
And I have to say, like with Rey, real quick, I saw I'm not going to say who wrote it, but I saw a review on Letterboxd saying that he found Rey very underdeveloped, and you don't know exactly what she's waiting for. Yeah, we do. She says she's waiting for her family. She wants a
Yeah.
better life. And, if there's anything to her character, she's longing for something better than what she has, just like Luke did. So wouldn't you want a character like that in Star Wars, something who wants something better than what they have?
Right.
Because, that's like Red Letter Media said in their video on Phantom Menace. You're in a movie like Star Wars, the audience needs someone who looks like a normal person to guide them through this strange universe. And I don't know. Like, people said that we could have done without Rey and just focus on Finn or whatever. Like, okay, maybe so, but still, we need someone else, like, to really focus on. And plus, the main saga, I mean, I'm going to go out on a limb here. This is a whole different topic, but if Rey is indeed a Skywalker, which I think she is, the main saga, that's the main focus, the Skywalker family. And I think that she could be, but I could be wrong. So, if anything, that's probably why she's the main character, other than the other stuff. So that's probably another thing as to why she's the main character, because it's about family. You cut that out of there, it's gonna ruin the whole thing. Not everybody's gonna like that, but unfortunately, I don't think it's even possible to please people anymore.
It's an interesting point, because I did. It kind of goes back to some of the other things we've talked about. If you look at, like, Captain America Civil War, I really bought it because I was invested in those characters. And I know other people that like my brother, thought it was fine. He didn't hate it, but he thought it was kind of forgettable, because I don't think he's that invested in the characters of Steve and Tony. And if you aren't, then you're not going to be that into that movie, really. If you think about it, you might think it's kind of fun, but and so I think that and maybe that's even true for, like Batman v Superman, or like people that got really invested in those characters, then I can see them enjoying the movie more than I did, and so I think that comes into play a lot, like how I don't know, how invested do you get, how kind of immersed you are in the story, and can you forgive those formula elements, or even embrace those formula elements. Like in Stranger Things, all the little homages to the 80s in there were so much fun. They were so enjoyable, and so it just sort of added color and nostalgia to it, and made it a better experience than if it had been set in 2016. It was better. So I don't know. But I was super invested in those characters, so I think that went a long way to kind of enjoying the nostalgia versus being annoyed by it and feeling like it was they're kind of leaning on it too hard, I guess.
Okay, so like, what is Stranger Things? I have to admit.
Stranger Things is a series on Netflix. It's really good.
I have yet to watch that. I knew that name was ringing a bell. I thought, what is that again? Is that a movie or is that something else?
I just finished it on Tuesday. That's why it's fresh on my mind.
Okay. I'm gonna have to watch that to get caught up.
Here's another good example we should talk about that I know you and I both love, was the Peanuts movie. So so the Peanuts movie, the criticism it did get was that it's just rehashing the greatest hits from the Peanuts. You saw them skating, you saw them, you saw Snoopy and the Red Baron, and and I guess it's just hard, because the last thing that I want from a Peanuts movie is for it to be new. I mean, I think, I don't know. So it almost depends sometimes on the franchise, I think, too. Don't you think?
I guess so. Yeah, and I guess with the Peanuts, I mean, I think this wasn't the first theatrically released Peanuts movie. I guess Bon Voyage, Charlie Brown was the first one, but I don't know how much coverage it got when it came out.
Okay.
But I guess in that case, you see a lot of kids movies similar to the Peanuts actually go outside of their constraints, and yet people don't like them. Like, say, the Smurfs, which I didn't even bother to see because I could tell that there was garbage.
It was awful.
Yeah, and they water it down with all this pop music and all that stuff. And I thought, oh, God forbid that they use that stuff in Peanuts. and even the Rotten Tomatoes consensus says it's fun and charming. It's got like an 87% or something on there. But it also said if relatively unambitious, and I said, what's wrong with that?
Right.
It's the Peanuts.
Yeah.
What more did you want them to do? Did you want them to? I don't know. I don't know.
think it goes back to characters again, because I wanted to see a movie about Charlie Brown, and that's what I got. I got a movie about Charlie Brown trying to impress the redheaded girl. Like, it was a simple story, and so I loved it. I thought it was just great. To me, that movie is
Yeah.
like a warm blanket. Like, it just feels good to watch. It makes me so happy. I love the animation. That was something new, at least.
Oh yeah.
A new style to it, and so for me, it really worked because I was invested in the characters.
Yeah, and also you saw the Red Baron missions actually in detail rather than just Snoopy sitting on the doghouse going. You actually saw him fighting the Red Baron. His imagination came to life instead of just him sitting on the doghouse pretending that he was fighting the bad guys. You actually saw like an in-depth look, so that was a little different at least.
Yeah.
And it had great humor in there too.
Yeah, it had great humor. It was just so sweet and lovely, and I don't know. This is just such a hard topic. It's a really hard topic because, yeah, I mean, it was just a simple story, I think, executed well.
Yeah.
And whereas I think other movies that rely on formula don't execute it well.
No.
And don't do a good job. And so then I don't like the movie.
Yeah, it all really comes down to, like we said, the people making the movie. That's really what it comes down to.
Mm-hmm.
And since you said simple story, I just thought of this. The Avengers. That's a very simple premise. Avengers stop Loki and all that stuff. But, I'm not going to say specifically who, but, there's this one guy that I've seen online. He's he's one of those people who hates the first Avengers movie. So, like, there's no underlying theme in there, which, he's kind of basing it, I guess, on people who use it as a club against other superhero movies like The Dark Knight or Spider-Man 2 or, I don't know, like some other superhero movies that are considered to be among the best. But, I do wonder about the Avengers sometimes. Like, I've thought about it. There really isn't like a whole ton of story depth, I guess. But, I think what really makes that movie work is like you saw a team of superheroes. I mean, we saw that with X-Men like a decade before. But the only difference was we saw them in their individual movies. And when it finally came together, Joss Whedon was able to balance it out very well. And they all had something driving him or her like in their mission, and which kind of oppose them to each other because Thor is trying to retrieve the Tesseract from Loki. Steve Rogers knows what that Tesseract can do because Hydra used it. And Iron Man, I think, uses his arc reactor in a similar fashion. So they're all trying to get it. And you have their big personalities is like, no, get out of my way. I'm going to do this myself. I don't need your help. And also you learn a little bit about Black Widow. She's got a dark past in there, which, upon retrospect. What's that?
In Ultron, you learn about Black Widow.
Oh, yeah. But what I'm saying is you do get a hint of it. She said, I got red on my ledger and I want to wipe it off.
Oh,
it shows you that there's more to her than, being this superpowered girl who can kick butt. Like, because that's how I felt she came off in Iron Man 2. Because Iron Man 2, I didn't like her character in that movie at all. It's like, what is she doing in this movie? And when she came in the first Avengers, I thought, oh boy. But then I thought, oh no, she's a pretty cool character. Not because I think she's attractive, but it's you do get a little bit of a hint of her, like and also she gets scared when the Hulk nearly beats her up. Like, she runs away.
Yeah. And
after Thor comes in and saves her, she's horrified by what could have happened. So they humanized the characters. And they took some other characters that weren't really that interesting to begin with, and they showed a complexity to them. So it's a simple story, but yet it has complex stuff going on, similar to Star Wars with Luke Skywalker. It was a simple premise, but you saw there was more to him than what was just on the surface. if you catch.
Definitely. And so the thing about the Marvel, we should talk about Marvel because
Oh yeah.
so there is a Marvel formula, and it's true that
Hmm.
nobody stays dead in the Marvel movies, and there are just definitely certain tropes that go
Oh
along
yeah.
with Marvel movies. But like you kind of have to look at Marvel as as a TV show with like 6 months gaps between episodes.
Oh yeah.
More than like individual movies. And if you think about the movies as kind of building on each other, then I think it really starts to work much better than just like looking at the one movie in and of itself. And that's what I think made Avengers, the first Avengers, work so well, is because we had seen each of these characters in their own individual movies, and then they all come together, and they all come together over the death of Agent Coulson. And so that was something that was moving and emotional and something
Yeah.
that mattered, because unlike the death of Superman that only had 2 movies, Agent
Yeah.
Coulson,
Yeah.
had been through all of these characters with us.
Yeah.
And so, it's it was, and you can even claim that he didn't really die because of Agents of Shields, but
Yeah.
uh but anyway, for that movie, it really worked, I think, because there was a reason that they were getting together. There's a reason they were fighting off, and you had a great villain in Loki,
Oh yes.
and you had great Joss Whedon dialogue, and so it just made it all really work. But you can't really separate it from all of those other movies that came before it.
Right, yeah. And since you mentioned that, just a little sidebar, I thought like when you said it makes the other movies even better, like when you see certain things happen.
Yeah.
Um, I'm gonna be posting my review of the first Harry Potter pretty soon. I filmed it. I'm just editing it together, putting the little touches on it. And look, I know you're not a big fan of some of those, and that's cool. But I think what the main thing with that, and also with the Star Wars movies, I think you said something similar in your discussion with Abby and Jeremy. You watch the movies in order, but then you see like it makes the experience feels more richer, I guess. When
Mm-hmm.
you like they certain things are brought up and you feel like and you know what the big picture is. And with Marvel specifically, like whenever Tony mentions how he never really got to reconcile with his father, now I'm gonna know the big picture and how it's like, oh boy, and we know how that turns out in the long run. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So
Yeah. Well, Harry Potter, it's frustrating for me because I loved them when they first came out. I absolutely loved every single one of them. But then on this rewatch, I have to be honest that I've been kind of bored. Like there
okay.
hasn't been as much for me to kind of, I don't know. And I was talking to my sister, and she said that really the Harry Potter stories at their core are kind of mysteries.
Right.
And you're trying to figure out kind of who Voldemort is, who the bad guys are. This sort of, especially the first like 5 books are kind of you're usually it's the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher or something. You're sort of figuring out this mystery,
Yeah.
and I think maybe for me, like now that I know the mystery, I know that it's not as interesting for me, I guess. I don't know why. Like
No.
I'm so surprised. Like I have been shocked that I haven't loved those movies more. And I'm not saying they're not like awful, but on the rewatch, they're just not that rewatchable for me for
Okay.
whatever reason. And not every movie has to be rewatchable. I don't think so.
No.
But like the fifth one for me was by far the best,
Oh
because
really?
yes, surprisingly so. But because it just had it had so much momentum, and I loved Dolores Umbridge as a villain. She was so good. Dumbledore's army was really good. So for me, that one was the one that was the most entertaining on the
Okay.
rewatch. And I don't know. I mean, I've just recently not rewatched. I've just recently watched all the Star Trek movies, and so that's an
Okay.
interesting series too, of how sometimes the formula worked and sometimes the formula really didn't work. And
Like Star Trek Five, Final Frontier.
yes, Star Trek Five, Star Trek Nemesis, Star Trek Insurrection, and those movies are just completely forgettable. They're not even so bad it's good. They're just boring, and yeah, they're just I don't know. They just didn't do anything that was interesting with the characters and the formula.
I just thought of something since you brought up Star Trek. Star Trek Into Darkness is one that gets a lot of flack because of the okay, look, it's been 3 years, so I would imagine people have seen this by now. Captain Kirk dies for a while in a similar fashion that Spock does in Wrath of Khan. Now, I'll be honest, I've only seen a couple of Star Trek movies because I've never really been a huge fan, but I appreciate them for what they are.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people were up in arms about like how like they talk to each other through the window, and like I have been and always shall be your friend. It was kind of more so the same but reversed at the same time, and then out of nowhere Spock says Khan and all that. I don't know.
I wasn't a big fan of that, to be honest. I feel like, I mean, it's okay. I like Benedict Cumberbatch. I like it's an okay movie. It's certainly not the worst of the Star Treks by any stretch of the imagination. In my ranking, I think I had it at number 8 out of 14.
The Star Trek fans say that J.J. Abrams' Star Trek movies are like the worst of them all. It's
that's
really?
Ridiculous. That's nonsense. But it just, I don't know. This is why this topic is really hard, because I can't even really explain it, but why it annoyed me there, but then it didn't annoy me other places. I don't know, but I did feel like they were leaning on it there. They weren't bringing enough like new things to kind of, so they were just sort of leaning on the Wrath of Khan to kind of fan service
like
fans.
To justify itself.
And oddly enough, it didn't, and it ended up just ticking the fans off and not.
Yeah.
and yeah, that's why, like I said, this is a hard topic because I feel so wishy-washy on it. Like sometimes I like formula movies, sometimes I don't. And I think a lot of it comes down is how invested I am with the characters and did they give me kind of enough meat to kind of
to say.
Yeah, or otherwise then it just becomes kind of annoying.
Yeah.
If they don't.
I think it also comes down to like what the audience wants to see, I guess, or what people want to see. They may expect something, but then get something entirely different. So I think it's also another thing, not just the people making it, but I also think that it's the people going to see it. I think that's another factor that we got to consider in this kind of thing.
Yeah.
No, and also since I just couldn't help but notice Spider-Man 2 right behind me, but Chris Stuckman, if you saw his Spider-Man videos earlier this year when he was leading up to Tom Holland's Civil War, he brought up something that really caught me by surprise, and I actually really disagree with him on this. And I've heard other people argue some similar things about this movie, but when he was talking about the girl, like when Peter rescues the girl in the burning building. And I mean, when was the last time you saw Spider-Man 2? Do you remember?
Long time. It's probably been 10 years. So, but
wow. Okay. Well, I'm going to do videos on announcement. I'm going to do a series of Spider-Man videos for Homecoming next year. I can't wait to talk about that. But with that, he said that he didn't like the scene where Peter rescues the girl from the burning building because he felt it was too tacked on and too similar to the first movie where Spider-Man's fighting the Green Goblin inside of a burning building. And it goes back to something that I said earlier. Well, it's not the same thing that happens in that scene. It's a different thing that's going on. Yes, it's an echo from the original movie, but in the first one, Peter as Spider-Man was trying to save people in the building from the bad guy, the Green Goblin who started the fire. And Spider-Man 2, Peter didn't have his powers, but he still felt the drive to help somebody when he heard that there was a girl trapped on the second floor. So he went in there knowing that he could die, but he still did it anyway. And it was part of his growth that said like he needs to do something. He still feels that drive inside of him, and he feels unsatisfied with himself when he gives up being Spider-Man, because that's another thing that people have brought up. They think that it was a complete backtrack of Peter's development in the first one, like accepting power and responsibility. But I'll cover it in more detail, but I think the second movie is that he starts off feeling a big feeling of guilt because of Uncle Ben. And then by the end of the movie, he does it out of a calling to do something that's better. It's not because of Uncle Ben again. It's something it's something better, and it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, that movie is a coming of age story, and so it makes sense that he would kind of come to have to kind of come to this realization by the end of the movie. Like he's growing up and having to deal with being a superhero at the same time.
Yeah, and also, people, I guess, had a problem with him quitting. It's like, well, I'm in the military, and sometimes my military duty days get in the way of my personal life, and I have to miss out on certain things. It gets frustrating, and it makes you just want to throw up your hands in the air and say, the heck with this, I'm done. And I can understand that you would naturally want to revert back to the way things were before because you think it's easier to go back to the past. So I think it's a similar thing that Peter's feeling as well. So
here's an interesting question. Tom Blakeney says, it's a bit like The Dark Knight Rises and how people say that Bruce stopped being Batman because of Rachel's death.
Oh, yeah. That's another thing.
Isn't that kind of true?
I guess
I thought he did stop being Batman because of
Rachel. Well, also because he took the blame for Harvey's killing of those people, like killing Harvey and all those people that Harvey murdered as well. So the Batman wasn't needed. So there was really no need for Batman to stick around once the crime wave was like shut down. So, and he wasn't planning on being Batman for the rest of his life. So
the thing I liked about The Dark Knight Rises, I actually saw it for the first time in March.
Yeah.
I'm weird. I know it. But for me, I actually liked that it tried to kind of take on some bigger themes. That's what kind of was the pluses on side for me, is that that it kind of took on this like, are the people going to revolt or are they not going to revolt? Are they going to be placated by getting their sort of needs satisfied? I thought that was kind of interesting, and so for me, I liked it. And I thought Bane was pretty intimidating, pretty scary, without being too violent.
Oh yeah. I probably should have warned you about the first fight between him and Batman because that's pretty hard to watch.
Yeah, it is pretty violent, but it all worked. It worked for me. I thought it was good. But anyway, here I thought of one that would be a good one for us to kind of talk about.
Okay.
Is X-Men Apocalypse. And so let's talk about, because this to me was a film that failed being a formula film. I really didn't like it. And let me explain why. I didn't like it because how many X-Men movies have we seen where this movie tried to embrace the formula and then it abandoned the formula at the same time. So how many times have we seen Magneto go from being the bad guy to having the change of heart to and so it was so obvious what was going to happen with him, and that he was going to come around and they were going to end up taking down Apocalypse. And Apocalypse to me was such a boring villain. He was so like, there was nothing interesting about him. He was just like, I have to make things right. I have to, rid the world of all these evil people. Like, at least Ultron to me was sort of funny, and he was part of Tony, and that made him a little bit interesting. And so like, and then the part where I felt like they failed in embracing formula is they it's not an X-Men movie. Like, X-Men movies are supposed to be about class, about the way that we treat people that are different. That was completely abandoned in this movie. There was none of that in X-Men Apocalypse. And so for me, what makes the X-Men movies special and better than the rest of the X-Men movies is this higher message that you get. And I just didn't feel that at all. And that there was no sense of sort of like class struggle. It was just like, to me, it was just like a dopey 90s action superhero movie. And it can be enjoyed, I guess, on that level. But I expected something better, especially after Days of Future Past, which was so different and so unique. And I guess I just don't, because people were saying in the chat room, Apocalypse is always two-dimensional. I guess I don't like Apocalypse then, because I guess I was just, to me, I just thought, and then like Magneto is one of the four horsemen of the apocalypse, and he does it without, like, he does it out of anger, okay, but then they completely like let him off the hook at the end. They're like, hey, do you want to hang around?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
You just killed millions of people, like literally, like millions of people. Just like, have a good day.
Yeah, I think it would have been a little bit better. I said it in my review. I thought it was a huge missed opportunity for Quicksilver to say, "You're my dad." So you still have family out there. You still got family out there. So I think it would have made it a little bit more riveting for him to actually come
Yeah.
back in the end. But yeah,
Well, or for Apocalypse to have like a real kind of theory and plan of like what he wanted to do instead of just I want to kill everybody and start over. Like that's so and then like you could see Magneto become invested in that plan instead of it just being like this white light that like convinces him to, to join. Like he's almost like hypnotized in a way to
yeah,
join. And I don't know, there were just so many characters I thought were the other thing that really bothered me in it is I felt like you got like 15 minutes of one character, so you'd get like a little bit of Magneto, and then you get like 15 minutes of Mystique, and then you jump back and you get a little bit of Xavier, and it just felt fragmented and frustrating to me, and
okay.
I didn't like it. I thought it was really boring and really dumb, and I was just so to me it failed at being an X-Men movie, so it failed in being the formula of what I want out of having these sort of higher messages that you want in an X-Men movie that make it better than the other superhero movies. But then it also failed in doing anything new to me because it was just like it just felt like I don't know. To me, it felt like a superhero movie from the '90s.
Mm, yeah.
Like not. I know
No,
other people liked it, but I'm just saying my
no,
my
it's
opinion
fine. It's fine.
that
It's just
to me it was a formula movie that was so disappointing
okay.
because I expected it to be better.
Yeah, I've only seen it once in the theater, so I don't know. I'd have to watch it again to make sure. But yeah, I definitely felt there was something missing. I mean, I wasn't expecting it to be better than Days of Future Past or just as good, but I was hoping that it was going to win me over, and I did like it. But anything that happened between the first viewing and the second viewing. So, um, I guess. Hang on, let me check something here. I got a list right here. So, Creed. Oh yeah, I have
Tom
Creed.
says Tom says that seeing Rachel going on a rant makes me happy for some reason.
Wow. Oh wait,
But I don't know. So for me, I guess I just wasn't invested in the characters because I wasn't that invested in Magneto because we'd seen it a million times before. I wasn't that invested because they kept going away from the characters, and so like because Days of Future Past, you had a story with a lot of characters, but it was about Wolverine and Mystique,
yeah,
and really about Mystique changing her mind and forgiving. That
sure.
was the core. So everything kind of worked within that framework of what they were doing. Whereas I just felt like X-Men Apocalypse, it didn't give me those sort of characters to kind of latch onto.
Yeah,
And it just kept moving away from them once I was kind of interested in their story. Like I would have liked to have seen more of Storm. I would have liked to have seen more of Cyclops. I would have liked to have seen more of some of these characters were hardly in the movie at all, and so I wasn't like able to kind of get really invested in their story.
yeah.
And so I think that's the big difference, and it just didn't feel like an X-Men movie to me.
I see what you mean, and
Yeah. So anyway,
um, yeah, there's a like I have Creed on my list, and that had some throwbacks to the original Rocky. Like he's trying to prove that he's not just some pushover, like Adonis
mm-hmm.
Creed, just like Rocky. He's trying to prove that he's not some pushover and that he is still worth something. And there's a training sequence. There's a boxing match at the end, and you have Rocky being his trainer and all that kind of stuff. But I'd have to watch the original Rocky again, which I think I'm going to watch it and I'm going to do a review of it in December because believe it or not, it turns 40 years old this year, the original Rocky.
Oh
And
yeah.
I think it's I don't know. I guess that's not. I wasn't too bothered by some of that stuff in there, like the throwbacks to the previous Rocky movies, because especially
No.
in a boxing movie, there's going to be the person who's down in his luck, the drama, the big climactic battle, the training montages, all that kind of stuff. So that's a very broad topic, I guess. to talk about. But
yeah. Well, I mean, I think I was invested in Adonis's story. I was invested in Rocky's story in that movie. Because there certainly have been horrible Rocky movies, that's for sure. And so I think that that's really where it comes down to is like, can you be invested in the characters, and then you're able to kind of embrace a formula movie. And if you're not invested in the characters, then the formula will start to bug you.
Yeah, I guess.
Don't you think?
Yeah, I would say so. It also comes down to audience expectation, I guess, because they've seen
that's true.
a lot of stuff to get, like, they've seen a lot of the same story, but it reminds me of something that John Bon Jovi said when I saw him in concert a few years ago. Like, you see things come, you see things go, but the more things change, the more they stay the same. Like, you see it in the music business also, like similar kind of songs, but with just a different twist, a different style. And I think it really is hard to find something that different and original, I guess. So it's a little bit of both ways, like the person making a movie in this case, and the audience that's watching it. So I think that's really, those are the two big factors.
Yeah, I think in the end, I mean, this is probably a frustrating answer for film studios, is that the good just has to outweigh the bad.
Right, yeah.
And you have to be able to kind of have enough to kind of overcome maybe some, because I don't know, like there's only so many stories to tell. And so you have to kind of, so every story, every movie, when you break it down, even something like Inception or something like that, at its core, is a story of, and that we've maybe seen before, the type of story, but what do they do that's new and different? Are you attached to the characters? Are you invested into the characters? Things like that. And so then it works. But when you're just sort of placated to, and they don't give you anything new, and you don't really care about the characters, then it just becomes really annoying.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, like Terminator Genesis was totally that way. It didn't give us anything new, which wouldn't necessarily have been a bad thing. But I didn't care about the characters, and I didn't really care about the story. There just wasn't enough good to outweigh the bad.
Right. Yeah. And I guess another thing that popped into my head was I think you said when you and I were talking on Facebook, like, you haven't seen the original Spider-Man in a long time, right?
Yeah, I haven't seen it in a long time.
Okay, well, I've seen people say that it's too formulaic and all that stuff. It's like Peter gets bit by a spider, his Uncle Ben dies, and he becomes a hero in the end and all that stuff. And I say, well, even so, I think it's still tastefully done and skillfully done, because, and they do have some, some new things in there as far as like adapting it from the comics and all that stuff. That's a really different topic. But in the comics, Peter has mechanical web shooters. In the movie, he shoots it out of his wrists. Like, actually shoots it out of his wrists. They actually had the guts to do that. And even though it upset a lot of fans, it's still, I still was okay with it, even though at the time I didn't know that wasn't how it happened originally, because that was my first introduction to the character. But I think maybe when we talk about, oh, go ahead.
You have to consider with those Spider-Man movies too that there weren't, what do we get, 6 superhero movies in a year here? I mean, those movies were kind of groundbreaking.
Oh, yeah,
in what they were doing. So you have to kind of take it, like, now it feels way more formula than it was then.
Yeah. Like,
because
you mean
those
like
kind of movies weren't being like made then.
Yeah. And I think that's a case of people are judging a movie like Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, or even the first X-Men movie by Bryan Singer, judging it from today's perspective, saying it's too formulaic and all that stuff. It's like, look, you have to consider what kind of condition the superhero genre was at that time. It wasn't like today where you could do more stuff with said characters. And back then they were trying to make the best movie possible and not so worried about trying to appease everybody in the crowd.
Well, and it's just the formula wasn't a formula yet, really.
Oh yeah.
What you had, like the Burton and the old school Batman and
Richard
the
Donner Superman
and the Superman, but that was about it. I mean, you had the Shoemaker ones, but Nobody was looking at those for inspiration.
Ugh.
And and so it wasn't a formula. You can't really criticize them for following a formula when it really wasn't a formula.
Yeah, I guess, but I guess it's like it's I guess some people had a problem with like, like the origin story, I guess. It didn't I don't know. It's kind of a
Here's a
hard.
good point from Tevya. He says Spider-Man, the character itself, is formulaic, even in the comics, and that's true. I think.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean,
you
I'm
could
no
say
expert on the comics, but it is. But again, they have to do it in a way where you're invested in the characters, and I think I was in those Spider-Man movies. Who knows? I have to rewatch them, but invested in the character, and I certainly was in the second one. As you see him really have to grow up, and
that.
you see him deal with Dr. Octopus, who had like real reasons for doing what he was doing,
Right.
and real identifiable, solid reasons.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now,
And so it just makes it work more because again, the good outweigh any of the negatives, I think.
okay, but just a quick question here. Since we mentioned Spider-Man, did you like Mary Jane in those movies or no?
I think maybe people are a little too hard on her. I mean, I think Kirsten Dunst is a good actress. She could be a little annoying, but I think she's okay. I don't think she's horrible.
I liked her fine in the first two
Yeah, I think
movies.
she's okay.
Yeah, a lot of people hate Kirsten Dunst, and it's like, whoa, 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 easy, okay? She's not awful.
No, she's a good. If you look at uh if you look at a movie called Midnight Special that came out this year, she is excellent in that movie.
Oh,
So
really?
she's a good actress. And yeah, I mean she is sort of always the damsel in distress who's sort of screaming and needing to be rescued and stuff. But
Yeah, but
what are you gonna do?
by the third movie, that's when it got old. The third movie, that's
Yeah.
when it got old. But the second movie, there's not as much as it was in the first one. Because, and they do try to make her, fight back against some of the baddies a couple times. But in the second one, where she tries, if you remember, she takes this big wooden stick or whatever. Doc Ock's about to stab Spider-Man with his tentacle or something, and he decides, okay, that's it. She's about ready to hit him, but Doc Ock, he doesn't even look behind him. He knows that she's right behind him. He just kicks her away. He's like, yeah, get out of here. I don't need you around here. If she had knocked him down easily, that would have just been stupid.
Yeah.
But that's a whole different topic. But I think maybe you and I don't know if you ever plan on doing like a series of videos for Homecoming next year when we get close to it.
Yeah, I'm totally up for it. Totally.
All right. Because next year,
I know one of my followers is named Ryan. He will freak out about my opinions on Spider-Man, but that's all right. I can handle it.
Okay. Well,
yeah, I mean, I just, if you, we don't want to probably get into Amazing Spider-Man 2 very much, but I wasn't invested in those characters. I didn't care. And I found, so that's the difference. Like if you, especially Electro, he was awful. But do you get invested in the characters? Do you not get invested in the characters? And is there enough sort of new things that the formula works for you, or does it feel like they're just kind of leaning on the formula and not allowing you, the script isn't allowing you to be invested in those characters?
Right. Like, wait, were you asking me about Amazing Spider-Man?
No, I'm just saying I think that's the key sort of division between when a formula movie works and when a formula movie doesn't work, is how invested in the story and the characters are you?
Yeah. At the end of the day, you're right. This is a really hard topic to discuss, but nevertheless, I had a lot of fun talking about it with you.
Yeah, I did too.
And yeah, I think it really comes down to, like I said before, it's the people making the movie, or in some cases like the television series, depending on what it is you're talking about, and the people who come to see it. It's the audience and the filmmakers. I think that's really, or maybe you can factor in the studio as well on some level. So it's really coming down to those two factors, I guess. So there's really I guess it's really no good answer as to how come we give this movie a pass and not this one, or how come this is all right and this is not. There's really no clear cut and dry.
It comes down to the script. I really think it comes down to the script, and is the script either funny or emotional, or does it does it allow you to be invested in these characters? And I think that's true for a new movie, a formula movie, anything kind of movie. If I'm bored, if I'm annoyed, if I'm, all those things, that's going to take away from my enjoyment of, it's kind of the same thing as, it's like when you're using tropes. People are like, oh, that's such a trope. Oh, that's a manic pixie dream girl, or that's a, like you could say in 500 Days of Summer that she's a total manic pixie dream girl trope. But the movie works because I'm invested in the characters, and it did enough things that were new and different. And within those, so you can use those tropes, you can use those formulas to make things better, and to even sometimes comment on those actual tropes and
Right,
say something about it.
Which I think I remember you talking about Fault in Our Stars. You felt like it would try too hard to break away from it, but it ended up kind of falling back into it anyway.
Yeah.
I felt the same way.
Yeah, not a horrible movie by any stretch, but
No.
yeah.
No. But I think that's all I got on my list, really.
Yeah.
Well,
and it's true, as Tevi says, you can't please everybody. And, if people should, and if people like Batman v Superman, that's awesome. If you like Amazing Spider-Man 2, awesome. You shouldn't allow anybody else. If you love Jurassic World, it shouldn't matter what, what I think about it, or anybody else. If you loved X-Men Apocalypse, that's awesome. You were able to get invested in something that I just wasn't. And that's okay. That's good. I'm glad. I want people to enjoy the movies. I want people to,
sure, yeah,
I think that's great. And so we shouldn't feel like threatened or upset if other people have different experiences than us.
No, because if you do feel threatened, then you probably have a really thin skin if you're easily annoyed by a different perspective on a movie or something. So I mean, it's maybe some people are by like certain YouTubers who just come off as very self-entitled or whatever. I guess it really depends on the person who's giving his or her thoughts on a movie. But at the same time, it's like, as hard as it may be, try to put yourself in the other person's shoes. Like, try to see like how come he or she feels this way, if they're very articulate and respectful as to why they don't really care for it.
Yeah. Well, and I try as a YouTuber, I try as a moviegoer, I try to mention at least some positives of things that I like. Even I rarely do rants. I did a rant on X-Men Apocalypse because I was so disappointed. But even in that review, I said some things that I liked, and some things that I could see why other people wouldn't be as annoyed as me. And I tried to give actual like reasons. There was a popular animation YouTuber who reviewed Kubo and the Two Strings, and he just like was so much hyperbole that I really lost a lot of respect for him for his review. Not that he didn't like the movie, that's fine, I don't care. But the fact that he was like, Charlize Theron, a passable live action actress, two-time Oscar nominee, Oscar winning actress, is passable. He claimed that Rooney Mara was one of the all-time worst vocal performances in an animated movie. I'm like, are you kidding me? We're in a year where we have Rob Schneider voicing a polar bear, and you're going to tell me that that Rooney Mara is one of the worst in history? And it was just just full of hyperbole, full of clickbait, and so that's the kind of review that I'm not going to respect.
No.
There were a lot of Force Awakens reviews like that. It's like, if you can't see anything that other people would enjoy about this film, if you're just gonna come and there was a YouTuber that spent like 22 minutes just like tearing the thing apart, and it's like, well, I'm not interested in subscribing to your channel, because it's not that you disagree with me, it's that you're not giving any kind of critical analysis that I respect.
Yeah, and you're not being respectful. You're not presenting yourself in a way that would make people want to listen to you. Yeah,
I mean, it's just hyperbole. It's just, I don't know. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, and so if you have any other movies to add, I mean, I think I've covered every single one that.
Yeah, I mean, I talked quite about a few of them. I'm trying to think. I mean, there are a lot of romantic comedies that I think that we could talk about, that because that's a favorite genre of mine, that that fail in making the formula work, and then there's ones that make the formula work. And I think it like a movie like You Got Mail, it totally follows. It's a remake
Oh,
of a
really?
Jimmy Stewart movie. Yeah, so it follows a very a very tried formula. So they don't like each other. It goes all the way back to Pride and Prejudice, this sort of formula. They don't like each other, but they really do like each other, and whatever. But it works because I like the characters so much, and I think the writing is so funny and so brilliant from Nora Ephron. And so it's
Yeah.
actually one of my favorites. I think you could say the same thing for Princess Bride. Like, Princess Bride doesn't necessarily do anything like new and different. It follows a formula of that kind of a swashbuckling adventure,
Okay.
but you like the characters, and it is funny, at least to me, and there's good sword fighting and there's good things, and it's like the difference between the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie and the sequels. The first one was funny, it had good characters,
Yeah.
you were invested in. The second one's the other one's not as much.
The second one was okay. The third one, that's when I checked out.
Yeah. So that's when the formula just becomes a problem. So that's why I say if the next episode in Star Wars, if it's just a rehash of Empire Strikes Back, then I will be really annoyed.
Yeah,
I'm cool with it for this one, but they need to do something different.
I mean, I would imagine there's going to be some similarities in Episode 8. I would imagine, but I don't think that Rian Johnson is going to go full on nostalgia or anything. Like some people said that J.J. Abrams did, which he didn't.
Right.
But I wonder though. I did see something today, a quote from Adam Driver talking about how it will resemble Empire Strikes Back as far as its tone.
What he said was that there will be a tonal shift like Empire Strikes Back.
Oh.
That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be. It's just we know that there's going to be a change in tone, like there was with Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, but also I can't get excited enough about this. But imagine if Rey turns out to be a Skywalker, of like a descendant of Skywalker. Imagine if Luke does the famous "I am your father" bit. Imagine what Rey will feel. It'll be a complete opposite of what Luke felt in Empire Strikes Back. He was terrified by that revelation.
Right.
She would be overjoyed by it. That's a nice little new twist that they would throw in there, if that's what they're going to do.
I know. It'll be really cool. Oh. It'll be really cool. And I think that there's a real backstory to Rey that she's like forgotten. I really think that she had training in the past, and I think that the Knights of Ren attacked, and then she had to be, put on Jakku.
Yeah, I think it's
to save her.
It's like a born identity kind of thing. She's starting to recognize these capabilities that she has.
And you saw that in her dream with Maz Kanata, the Vision.
Yes. And I listened to an audio commentary. I don't know if you've heard of Hello Greedo. It's an all things Star Wars YouTube channel. He wears a Stormtrooper helmet like I have.
I haven't seen that.
Oh, it's got some. There's probably some cursing, some F-bombs dropped in there a couple of times, and maybe some lewd stuff once in a great while. But I listened to his commentary, and he mentioned something about the vision that Rey had. And he said that this right here tells me, like, when she's looking around, you see all these dead bodies in the rain, and Kylo Ren and the rest of the Knights of Ren standing around. He said that he has concluded that she was there when it happened. And I said, that's possible, yeah.
Interesting.
She might have been there, and maybe, I don't know, maybe Kylo Ren was about to do something and something happened afterwards. But again, we don't know the big picture yet.
Yeah. Anyway, I think that it's an interesting discussion. It's such an ephemeral thing of why does something work and why does it not work. But I think that people who just flat out say, oh, that's a formula.
Yeah.
And that makes it bad, I think is really stupid.
Yeah, the more I hear people say, oh, it's too formulaic, it's too familiar, the less serious I take it, really. Yeah, unless they give us some concrete explanation.
Yeah, you get like maybe one, and again, some of the most original movies last year, everyone hated. So originality is not a valid argument. What's a valid argument is if you didn't get invested in the characters, you didn't, then that's, if you did have a problem with Rey. It maybe things being too easy. That's a valid complaint. I get it.
Sure.
But to me, the good outweighed the bad. So,
Oh,
but
and
yeah, so I think that's the real sort of is that original movies are great. I loved Inside Out, and to me that was really
oh yeah,
really
it was good.
original.
Yeah,
But
and they
I
talked
certainly
about
don't
it at my
expect that
church.
from every movie.
Wait, what was that? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Said I certainly don't expect that from every movie.
Oh, yeah, and I think I said it to you on Twitter. The church I go to, they talked about Inside Out at the movie segment this past July. So I thought that was a really cool insight that they brought up. I wish they were
That is
able to
cool.
post their videos, their sermons on that regard, but they can't because of copyrights. So
Oh,
that's a bummer. But and
I don't know. What do you agree with me that really it comes down to character investment and script?
oh, sure, yeah. I mean, like my factor, it's the people making in the audience, but you could throw that in there too. It's the script and whether or not you like. It's basically just make me care. If you make me care, then that's all that matters, really.
Yep.
Oh, and also one more original movie to bring up. If I don't know if you've seen it, is Edge of Tomorrow with Tom Cruise.
Good one. I love that movie.
I thought seeing the previews, I thought it was just going to be another Oblivion, where I thought, oh my God, really? Tom Cruise is doing a sci-fi again?
I know.
But then I walked out of that theater going, wow, that was so